Okay, let's go. Chapter 5. So we're continuing with chapter 5 of Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers. This is really the official final chapter, because chapter 6 is really an addendum collected from other teachings, predominantly showing the value of Torah study. Okay, so chapter 5 is going to deal with numbers, starting with 10, going to 7 to 3, about things that are in series of these numbers. Um, let's start. Mishnah 1. The first Mishnayot of the chapter detail in chronological order matters of 10 components, beginning with the creation of the world. With 10 statements, Asara Mamarot, of the Holy One, blessed be He, the world was created. As described beginning of the book of Genesis, God said, let there be light. God said, let there be a firmament, right? So the mechanism of all creation came down to 10 statements. Let there be light, let there be this, let there be that. Obviously, in those 10 statements is the 6 days of creation. And there's a lot of, billions of details of what's in those 10 statements. But they were described as being given in 10 statements. Okay. The question arises, why does all this detail teach? What does it teach? Why? What are you trying to? Why is the Torah trying this? If there's hundreds, thousands, billions of things, then why are you picking 10 to be the general number? Since after all, couldn't the world have been created with one statement? You're summarizing anyways. So why you summarize the 10 statements versus just one statement? And this is not just a statement; it's not summarized. This is the Torah as God's, chronicler, or the chronicler, um, is saying God did intend. Why did God pick 10 to do it? Right? It's a funny question. Like, you don't always ask, why did this happen in the story? Because that's what's happened. Because that's what happened. You don't ask questions on a story. But the Torah is not just a story; it's also a guide, and everything is instructional. So why is it? Why did God do it, and why do we have to know about it? Why is it so important? Um, so the answer it gives like this. Rather, the detail of the statements is intended to underscore the utmost significance of each component of creation, and as a result, to exact punishment with greater vigor from the wicked. It, let's just try to understand it, and then ask me your questions, and then we'll go further. Um, so the Torah, God didn't intend, and the Torah depicts it in 10 in order to punish the wicked who, with their evil deeds, destroy and ruin the world. And conversely, it's to give great reward to the righteous. So they uh, give fine reward to the righteous who sustain the world which was created from 10 statements. Do you understand this? What don't you understand?
What does Tim think of talking about?
What's the question? What's the answer? Before we ask, what's it saying? Just what's it saying, and then we can. Question it.
The part that confuses me is to exact punishment with greater vigor from the wicked, who with their
Oh, wait,
evil
wait, what's the question before that? What's the question of this Mishnah?
shall teach.
Right. Like, why not teach one big statement? God
Right.
created everything. He already is relying on the trillions of details that is not specified. So why are you specifying 10?
Who says it?
The Torah. The Torah depicts the God's act of creation was let there be light, let there be a sky, let there be seas. 10. Okay, that's still not comprehensive. It's extremely, extremely general with relying on trillions of detailed things that were created in those categories. So then what are you gaining by saying you're anyways relying on for, infinite or trillions of details that are not specified? Once you're generalized and you say, in the beginning, God created the heavens, the earth, and everything in them. Why do we have to go through these details, which are really not, they're very minimal? That's the question. Do you understand the question, Regina? Okay, what's the answer? What does the answer say? What do you think the answer say?
The significance of each component,
Yeah.
and then this is where I get confused.
Yeah, it's confusing.
And as a result, to exact punishment with greater vigor from the wicked, who with their evil deeds destroy and ruin the world, which was created with 10 statements, and to give fine reward with greater vigor to the righteous.
Right.
So, what determines the exact punishment with greater vigor?
Wait a second. I bet. How's it answering the question? Why did he pick 10?
It's not.
Because when you have 10, you can punish the bad guys and reward the good guys. Why?
That's what I don't understand.
Like, what is that? You know, what does 10 have to do? My phone. Okay. Why you're
Don't know why 10.
So I'm going to give you the basic answer. When we prepare this class, so yeah, later. Text me, okay? Text me. I'm left it. Okay. So here's the simple answer. If God would have done with one, you'd be like, what's the big deal for God? The fact that the Torah goes out of its way to show God, even on a general level, went intentional step 1, 2, 3. It's a bigger deal, seemingly. And when you mess it up, you're more guilty. And when you don't mess it up, you sustain it, you're more laudable.
10. Why not 7 for the 7?
No, so fine. That's a fair question. I'm saying, but first of all, we should understand why a number. Answer, because we want to punish the bad guys for messing up this number of this world constructed by this number, a number, and reward the good guys for sustaining this world with a bigger number. So it's a very simple answer. It's like 1, no big deal. 10, bigger deal. So now, if you do bad to it, you get punished. You're more deserving the punishment. It's not a very satisfactory answer. It's kind of it doesn't really hit the spot. So I'll give you, it doesn't say it here in the Steinsaltz, but it has in the other one. It actually this touches on a huge idea. And this huge idea is very prevalent in Hasidus and in Kabbalah, which is the 10 Sefirot. Are you familiar with that?
No.
10 Sefirot, and you should Google on Chabad.org after, is Kabbalah's answer to how a infinite God can create a finite world. I mean, that's not the only answer, but in other words, there's a big problem. How does God have what to do with this world? Like God's transcendent and infinite, and this world is not infinite. How do you bridge that gap? different ways of dealing with that issue. Kabbalah's way of saying there's this whole system where God, so to speak, yes, to true the essence of God cannot create, cannot be involved. What doesn't make sense for the essence of God to be involved in this world, but God can make godliness kind of this like bridge where it's like the rays of the sun are not the sun, but the offshoots of the sun, and they are the tools, the offshoots of God's perfection that can then interact or at least be a source for the world. I don't know if this 10 Sefirot. What's the 10 Sefirot? What are they? Why we come up with 10 Sefirot? Why? I'm saying that's what they are, but it's basically God's toolbox to work to create a finite world, to make realities. What are the 10 Sefirot? These are the 10 stages of the creative process in the human being, which is an image of God, and therefore they are indicative, at least on a very small level, of the creative processes by God. And what are they? We'll just list them off. 3 intellectual, 3 cognitive, Chachma Bina Dat, actually the acronym is Chabad. Then 7 emotions.
So there's 3 intellectual,
three intellectual components of a person's psyche or of a creative process. And then there's 7 emotions, 7 internal emotional processes that result in creating something. And those are Chesed, Gibur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. It's beyond the scope of this class, but let's say it's the primary 2 would be loving kindness and discipline, boundaries are the main 2. And the others are kind of serving that.
Is the just in terms of souls, the animal soul and the godly soul, they both have the spirits.
Yeah. Well, they have. Yeah. Everything's a mirror image. Has the same. Okay, but this is pre-Kabbalah. This is pre-Kabbalah is being written as a book. This is 1,000. So, but you see that they were Kabbalists. They're already talking about things in a way that is very aligned with what eventually became revealed as the secret and then revealed Kabbalistic doctrines. So now that you know that preface, you can understand the mission a little better. That why God pick 10 Sefirot? Pick 1 Sefira. Why did God need a palette of 10 colors that anyways have to, mix and make a million other things? Make 1 color. Have 1 magic wand. Why 10 magic wands? So the answer is because this is where God shows you how details matter. Why? If there only be 1, let's say, mamar, 1 utterance, which would be the same as 1 sefira, 1 creative process, then the problem is that everything would be very much, even if it be created like a duck and a stick and a cloud, they'd all be really, the differentiation would be so apparent. They'd kind of be all like part of 1 tapestry in a very obvious way. The oneness would color everything. You wouldn't see there's differentiation because God's infinite, everything has to be possible for God, but you all see as part of God. So the whole idea of the 10 Sefirot is really the God, even in the very early stages, wanted to show differentiation of things, that details matter, things matter, and therefore, here's the thing even more so. When there's differentiation, then there's also free choice. I'm trying to understand why that's. Meaning, what happens is by doing 10, you're basically you're creating the possibility for finitude, even though in that stage it's still pretty God's finite abilities. but the differentiation already creates boundaries, and boundaries evolves eventually to being a very physical world where God is hidden, because boundaries are a result of God's concealment. And everything was about making the world, ultimately this world, to be equilibrium of good and bad. This is free choice. And therefore, this, in other words, the 10 Mamarot is the first concept of differentiation, which is the precursor to concealment. Why? Because if there's boundaries, that means you're already hiding, you're already fragmenting God's overarching oneness. So it's a form of concealment. The putting parts to it. So in other words, this is saying why they're 10, because God needs 10 in order to, or some kind of differentiation in order to create concealment. When there's concealment, oh, now there's bad guys, now there's good guys. There's no concealment of God, there's no bad and good. Everything is we're just like puppets, we're just automatic. So that gives you a little explanation of behind the scenes of this Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah 2. The previous Mishnah dealt with the 10 statements with which the world was created and the repercussions for humanity, in whose hand the fate of the world was entrusted. God exacts punishment from the wicked, destroy and rewards the righteous. This Mishnah continues a list of 10 items that relate to the matter of reward and punishment themselves. There were 10 generations listed in the Torah from Adam till Noah. The reason that all these generations were listed is to inform how much forbearance there is before him in God, as all these generations were increasingly infuriating. They're very bad. They're bad people. I mean, worse and worse, culminating, in the generation of the flood. Until God ultimately and God did not exact immediate retribution for their sins, but allowed them to exist in the manner for 10 generations in the hope they would mend their ways and repent, until he ultimately brought the flood waters upon them. Likewise, there were 10 generations detailed in the Torah from Noah until Avraham. So that's for the second 10 generations. To inform how much forbearance is before him, as all the generations, patience, as all the generations were increasingly infuriating until Avraham. In contrast to Noah, Avram came and turned to the true faith, and therefore received for himself the reward of all of them. It's as though he remedied the wickedness of all the generations that preceded him. Some say that this is actually giving an explanation of why ultimately God chooses Abraham's children to be the bearers of the Torah, because since Abraham, passed all the, he was a righteous man in a bad time in the early generations, and they were wicked. Had they been righteous, they would have been having descendants that would receive the Torah, but they didn't. Okay, and that's what it means. He received the reward of them all, meaning that he not like he got the candy. They didn't. He says that they're basically incorrigible. So Avram was the one, sapling that grew upright. So God gave him and his descendants the tools for tikkun olam. Okay, Mishnah 3. Following the previous Mishnah, dealt with the count of 10 generations from Noah and finished by Avram. The Mishnah cites a facet of Avram's exalted status, also related to 10. So he said Avram was a good guy. How is he a good guy? Let's see. And connected to number 10. With 10 ordeals, 10 tests, they need to overcome. Avram, our forefather of blessed memory, was tested, and he withstood them all. Not only that, he didn't voice any resentment against God. All this was done to inform and reveal how great the love of Avram, our forefather, blessed memory, was for God. In case you wondering what the 10 tests were, look in footnote on the bottom of 157. Different commentators talk about different things being the main tests, but here is in here the requirement to leave his homeland, the requirement, the abduction of his wife by 2 kings, the famine in the land of Canaan, and the binding of Isaac, among others. So it's not clear exactly which they're done, but they're roughly the same. Maybe a few people highlight different ones. Okay. Next. Once on the number 10, Mishnah 4. 10 miracles were performed on our behalf. 10 miracles were performed on behalf of our ancestors in Egypt, as they were spared from the plagues that were visited upon Egypt, and 10 miracles performed on behalf of the sea. According to a tradition, according to the sages, the miracles of the sea include the pillar of fire that protected them, their crossing through the midst of the sea, and more. So in the Haggadah we talk about this. We don't really, in the verses, you don't see so much explicit thing. A lot of them is more in the Midrash. But there's different parts of the miracles of the sea, this happened in their favor, that happened in their favor. Okay. 159. God brought 10 plagues upon the Egyptians in Egypt, as recorded explicitly in the Bible, and he afflicted them with 10 corresponding plagues at the sea, as the sages explained based on inferences from the verses. So, in addition to miracles to the Jews, there was there's plagues for the Egyptians. With 10 trials, our ancestors tested Hashem, blessed be, in the wilderness. They complained that he took them out of Egypt, did not believe that he is capable of performing a miracle when they needed one, and violated his commands. As stated, after sending the spies, and have tested me these 10 times, have not heeded my voice. Now, one of the 10 complaints were that God won't rescue us from the Egyptians, he won't rescue us from the sea, the manna, the water, the bitter water. Look, it's all on the bottom of footnote 159, 160. Nice Dvar Torah. So it sounds like there are 10 times the Jews are really bratty in the desert. But the truth is, it could be looked in a positive way that we were like little children then. And we tested our parent, God, in every which way. 10 being a very complete number. In general, 10 represents like a full number. Even in math, it's called like a perfect number. No, perfect number? That's a different thing. The point is that it's a complete set. It's a full number. So that shows the Israelites tested Hashem in every which way, and God came through. So you know what happens? Any archetype of complaint was taken care of. So on the good side is that we ended up, I mean, we shouldn't have done that, but once we did, we ended up believing God can come through in any which way. Another point they said is a lot of times we tell us if only God would show us himself, we'd be happy, we'd be good, right? Life would be so easy to be so righteous. The reality is there's plenty of revelation going on then when they left Egypt, and yet they still complain. This is human nature. Human nature is not going to change even amidst plenty of good plenty and revelation of God. Look what happened. Any questions, comments? We're continuing with the number 10 then. So now following the miracles of the leaving Egypt, miracles that happened when we were in the land of Israel. 10 miracles were performed on behalf of our ancestors in the temple on a regular basis. And they are no woman who was pregnant miscarried due to the odor of the consecrated meat sacrificed on the altar. Although typical, the pungent odor from burning multiple offerings is liable to cause miscarriage. Interesting. That's one way of looking at it. Most commentators do not take that line. I don't know why you picked that. Some say the opposite, that it's brought down a lot of times in halacha that if a woman is pregnant, she has a great craving, she should be given it. To the point, by the way, it's a serious thing that if she craves even something that's not kosher, she try to dissuade her. But if she's irrationally desiring it and can't shake it, they say it should be given to her because it could cause a miscarriage by.
It's bacon, you should give it to her.
No, I don't know. I don't think this. Maybe it's. I would think not, but in theory, yes. In practice, no. But if it's considered, I guess I don't know what a craving can an unmet craving of a pregnant woman what that can do. Here it's claiming that can do damage. I don't know.
I just always wanted salty things.
Mm. So the reality is a lot of the temple is a big barbecue. A lot of animals being slaughtered and on the altar. The problem is you can't have the meat. It's for the altar, for the Kohen. It's not for the most people. So she's going up as a part of the pilgrimage, but she can't have it. It's a very tempting and frustrating craving that she can't meet. Yet she never suffered from it. Okay, the consecrated meat never spoiled. So if meat became sanctified part of a sacrifice, it never spoiled even without refrigeration. It would be eaten within a day or two. So that, but even a day or two with no refrigeration, the Mediterranean could spoil. It never spoiled. No, a lot of went on the altar, burned to God. Some was a kohen, some went to the owners. Some. It says they'd have a pyre of fire on the altar. Char, yeah, burnt ash. And a fire from heaven comes down and hard to relate to, huh? So one of the explanations is this was like many things, there's a mystical component that was not, that was there that we can't relate to. But one way of looking at it is that everything creation is basically taking God energy and then filtering it till it becomes a finite being, right? You're like filtering and like diffusing energy till it becomes like very low level energy. It could be separate. It could feel separate. It could have differentiation. So that's everything. That's how you get stuff. You get animals, you get birds, you get grass, you get people. When they would take the animals, what would happen? You're essentially doing creation in reverse. It says a heavenly fire. It wasn't just like a fire, like a zapper. It was a unraveler. It was a sucking back up the diffused energy back to the source in the animal.
Like a dragon's breath? Going
Well, dragons be incinerated. I think here it's more.
Back into the
Uh,
dragon.
yeah, I think here but the thing is there it's more it's all the heat. It's not heat. It's more about it's I'm probably in science like a frag a a defragmentation of the energy, pure like putting it back into its higher source. Animal sacrifice is really cruel, right? Animal, and it's like a little bit cruel. Um, I think the main answer is that a human being is meant to be a active, conscious, sentient, um, moral being. And animals, while they have, they feel pain and stuff, they're not moral beings. The truth is, it wasn't just the animal. There was a there was a representation of every part of the four strata of universe on there: vegetative, mineral, animal, human. Human brought the sacrifice, the animal. It had to go along with vegetative stuff like oil and wine and flour and salt would be the mineral. So it's basically representation of everything. It wasn't just about the animals, but really every and the humans, the one bringing it, so they're bringing their like emotions to God. But it was essentially a way of like taking, crass things of representation of this world and doing it via God's command, and then seeing how it would like be somewhat, besides burns, also unravel into mystical oneness.
And that's continued until the
Second temple.
second time. And that's done daily.
Yeah. Some days had more than others. Holidays and Shabbos had more than others, but there was daily, yeah. There was communal required offerings, and there was personal ones of people for different reasons.
And when we bring those sacrifices, this fire will come.
Yeah, if you do it right, yeah, you fire that consumes it. Okay, so back to the miracles. So no fly was seen in this slaughterhouse, surprisingly. No impure seminal emission befell the high priest of Yom Kippur, which would have disqualified him performing the service and necessity to replace again. Rain did not extinguish the fire of the wood of the arrangement, and wind did not divert the column of smoke. You can see the picture on the bottom. No disqualification was found to Omer, the barley offering in the second day of Passover, or in the two loaves on Shavuot, the two wheat loaves, which are the two public meal offerings, or in the showbread, which is what they would bring 12 breads. If you look to the right, the shoe bread, it's a weird way of saying it, the shoe bread. The shoe bread you see on the right of bottom 163 is this like Lego cinder block. It's bread. It's folded over bread. It's like sheet cake folded over, I think, or similar to that. And those were 12 breads. They're brought every week. And at the end of the week, the kohen would replace and they would eat the remnants. With it.
So are you saying up to second temple, there was some kind of revelation of God in this book?
So there was less so in the second temple than there was in the first temple. But yes, there was still some, it was a lesser time, but there was some revelation of God in those times. The big problem is with that is like, then why were they falling to idolatry all the time in those years?
Yeah, like
That's an obvious question. Before that, the first temple, they kept on. Again, the point is that even with great revelation, there's always the number one rule of reality is free choice. Even if there's great revelation in Jerusalem, there's going to be great temptation in the pagan cults of Syria to entice Jews to that. There's actually a great lust for idol worship in those days. There was some big attraction to it. Yeah.
Then what else?
The rabbis prayed for the primitive desire for idol worship to go away. The primal or primitive desire for idol worship should not exist in after the times of the Talmud. They actually prayed to change the psyche of man, to not want that. And then they replaced it with money instead. So it says.
Better
Okay.
worship.
Anyways, let's go on. This is more, everything in here is referencing a whole topic, you know. Another thing, there's no snake or scorpion that caused harm to people of Jerusalem at the pilgrimage 3 times a year. No person was said to his counterpart, there's not sufficient space for me to lodge in Jerusalem, even though there's a huge influx of guests, right? Because there's only so many inhabitants of citizens of Jerusalem, and there's all Jews or representation of all Jews from around the world at that time would come in all 3 pilgrimages, and there was never a problem with sleeping arrangements. In the bottom, they show the city of David excavations, a Greek inscription of the synagogue, Theodotus inscription, describes the pilgrimage. Page 165. In continuation of 10, let's go to 10 things that are phenomenal, 10 Twilight Zone things, literally Twilight Zone. I say Twilight because they're created Erev Shabbat during Twilight. Now, Twilight, the technical term in Hebrew, before I say that what these 10 things are, is Bein Hashmoshes, Bein Hashmoshot. Um,
And that's before the 3 stars?
yes, it's after sundown till the 3 stars. So it's a twilight, it's an in-between stage. So on one hand, it's still part of the 6 days of creation. On the other hand, Shabbat is this whole, uplifting state of being on Shabbat, especially the first Shabbat ever, is a little bit of both. It's kind of like paranormal, right? It's like normal means it's part of nature. Para, it's like a little beyond that. So the 10 things are supernatural phenomena created in these 10, in these 10, in this twilight zone, twilight time. And they are Velu and Piaretz, the mouth of the earth that swallowed Korach, was already created by in day 6, at the end of day 6 of creation. Upia Be'er, the mouth of the well that would produce water for them in the wilderness. Third was Pia Ason, the mouth of Bilam's talking donkey. Keshes was the fourth was the rainbow, a sign that God will never bring a flood to the earth again. Vamon, filth. Fifth was the manna. Vamata, the staff of Moshe, which did a lot of wonders. Hashamir, the shamir is a worm, a stone or a creature capable of splitting even the hardest stones. This miraculous stone or worm that you put on a stone to crack stones. It says King Solomon used it to hew the stones for the temple. Maktav, the script that was on the tablets of the covenant written with the finger of God. Michtav was so I don't know why they say there. This is now some say that they say, well, I'm like they give one translation I don't like. Ktav is the script, and the other is Michtav is the miracle of the tablets. That though the 10 statements of the tablets were hewn on the stone through. So it goes through what happens when you go through, you hew letters through. What happens? The one way is mirror image, right? You can't read it both ways. If I go, ABC, you're going to see it, CBA or whatever. Right? You're going to see it the other way. But it wasn't like the tablets. Miraculous. Any side you picked up, it would or like the screen in the iPhone, it would go, vertical, horizontal. The letters would always write themselves. So again, it's a miracle that it's a paranormal thing that existed. Baluchot, the actual first tablets. Some say to add to the list of 10 demons. If you want to know what demons are intelligent beings that do not have a corporeal body, though they do have a certain form. At times, they're the emissaries to do evil in the world for God. Okay, some say also the burial spot of Moshe, which was semi-miraculous. No man ever saw Moshe's burial place because even if you got close, it would move away. Like you'd never be able. It's like the hidden forest, and you can never find it. It says the Romans one time were told where it was. They went, and everywhere they go, it would move away from them. Like they thought they were getting close. It's kind of, I think it's a different realm. It's almost like in a Twilight Zone realm, so to speak. Elah Shalom Avinu, the ram of Avram by the binding of Isaac, the ram that took the place of Isaac. Some say also tongs made with tongs. So you think about, it's a funny thing, like to make tongs, metal stuff, you need tongs. If you want to forge metal, you need something metal to go in the fire, right? So it had to be a metal utensil that they could then create other metal with. They shouldn't burn their hands. Okay, next Mishnah. Just a few minutes, another 10 minutes. Now is 7. We're done with the 10s. We'll go to the 7s now. There's 7 qualities in an unaccomplished person. Golem is like dolt. Unaccomplished person. Unrefined, unaccomplished person. And there's conversely 7 in that correspond in a wise man. A wise person does not speak in the presence of one that is greater than he in wisdom. 2, he does not interrupt the words of another. He allows them to complete his statement, and only then does he comment, ask a question, or challenge others' statement. He does not respond rashly, whether in answering a question is posed to him or in rejecting statements made by others, but rather he waits and considers whether and how to respond. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't impulsively and rashly respond. He asks questions that are relevant and he responds appropriately. He doesn't veer off the topic. He says on the first thing first, like you ask a question. Okay, answer 1 is to your question 1. Answer 2, question 2. And regarding matters that he has not heard, he says, I have not heard. Meaning when he's asked about these matters, when he introduces novel idea of his own, he makes the listener knows that he did not receive this matter from someone else. He acknowledges the truth. If someone proves him wrong, he recognizes it. The chilufei and begolam, and the opposite of these virtues are in a idiot, into an unaccomplished person. They interrupt, they're hasty, etc., etc. They can't acknowledge the truth. Anything stick out to you there?
Here we've got counters to kind of like the beginning of the 10s.
Yeah. We're doing counting. Yeah, we're doing up to 7. Any questions? Okay, Mishnah 8. The Mishnah, the one that follows, continues a list of 7 matters. Here the Mishnah addresses the meaning of calamities that befall the world, meaning the community, as a result of communal transgressions. The first part of the Mishnah addresses trouble that results from failure to give truma and tithes, and the Mishnah proceeds to other calamities. Truma is a tithe you give to the Kohen.
Okay.
Tithe. Meiser in Hebrew. Meiser is, well, tithe actually means a tenth. Truma is not a tenth. It's a 2%, but it's the first. It's the first. It means a donation, a gift.
And it's the 2% that you give to the Kohen?
2% to the Kohen, and the remaining 98% you give 9.8% to the Levi, and so on. There's more. There's more things you have to give also, but that's the main thing. Tithe is I have 100 pounds of wheat for my crop. I got to give 10 of them to charity, but not particularly charity. I have to give it to the Levite. Before I do that, I give the 2% to the Kohen. Any Kohen I want.
10% to the Levite and 2% to the Kohen.
2% to the Kohen. Whatever's left, 10% of that to the Levi. So 98% is left after 2% taken. Then you take 10% of that, 9.8% you give to the Levi. This was in order to allow them to be career, spiritual servants of the community. They were supported by everybody else. Okay. All right. 7 types of calamities come to the world as punishment for 7 types of trains. It's a very it's a natural process that because the world is created to do this good, when you withhold this good, you're causing the negative energy to manifest. So sin 1, when some of the people tithe their produce and some do not, famine of drought comes. Since rain does not fall in Israel, and then in this case, now there's no rain, so there's minimal produce and only in certain places. Therefore, some of them are hungry and some of them are satiated. So if society is, some people are stingy and some are donating appropriately, then some. There's a mixed bag of economic goodness. But 171, if they all resolve not to tithe, famine of chaos, wars, and drought comes. The chaos makes it impossible to procure the little food that is available. Everyone suffers. We decide not to take challah from the dough, which is another form of tithe. We now burn it, but in the days every bread you give to the Kohen, the first handful. And famine of annihilation comes. The famine not only causes suffering, but it also eradicates the people. So it's like further and further like stinginess and non giving to the people you have to give to. The plague of pestilence comes to the world as punishment for death penalties mentioned in the Torah that were not given to the jurisdiction of the court. So if it's technically you got off on a technicality, God will cause that person to die through a plague. It also comes as punishments for not declaring the sabbatical year produce ownerless and for hogging it when you really should have allowed everybody to have part of it. The sword of war comes to the world for the delay of justice, the perversion of justice, and those who issue Torah rulings not in keeping with halacha. Because the ruling and not keeping halacha is like a miscarriage of justice. Yeah. Okay. Mishnah 9. The beginning of the Mishnah is a continuation of the previous Mishnah and enumerates 2 more calamities. Wild beasts come to the world for oaths taken in vain and for profaning the name of God. 173, exile comes to the world for idol worship, for bitter sexual relations, for bloodshed, and for failure to leave the land fallow.
Can we go back to the sword, like the wars in the world
Yeah.
coming because those who issue Torah ruling not in keeping with the correct Is it putting more pressure on rabbis?
Um, I think it's rabbis, judges, society leaders.
Don't explain anything in the current.
Hmm.
I thought this was all prior to the second temple and
No.
not to the current world.
This is the second temple, but no, there's a lot of this applies, but the temple stuff would only apply in the temple, but the messages that are not temple centric would apply. Um,
Which relates to this to this.
you'd have to think about how, but I don't know. We don't. Good question.
Because today's world's a mess.
People don't tithe. Now you know the secret. um, everything is scale for scale, is measure for measure. Because the people don't give charity to the poor starve and some die. So therefore, it elicits a harsh decree to cause plagues to break out and people to die. Okay, I'll do one more. Um, everything in the Torah talks about tit for meaning measure for measure. That's different. That's wrong. It's not. It's not. It's more. It's more. You cause this with your actions. You reap the repercussion of that same type of energy in your life, which will result in a similar bounce back effect.
But the things that
Comes around, goes around.
what is currently happening in this world is not because of the actions of many of us. it's
Right.
because of the actions of a few. And there are many of us who are trying to change those actions, but it's extremely difficult.
Well, I think today would be different because the world is so spiritually deficient, and God doesn't expect more than is possible. But I guess um,
How do we know? Like, there's so many different ideas and it's right and wrong.
Torah.
Right, but even the Torah we go.
There's different opinions within the Torah.
Don't
So I think here's the thing. Um,
this.
yeah. Well, it's not mysticism. It's basic. God punishes bad and rewards good.
Word is good, but like, I
And
think they
a lot of people are being punished for the deeds of others that a small minority.
So your question is a collective punishment.
yeah.
I think, to be honest, I don't really. I'm not so concerned about all this.
You concerned.
No, no. I mean, I think God understands the mental handicaps people have of being good today, especially. But I think the general way we look at it is that punishment is like your kid, I don't know, you burned the hole in the wall, no ice cream for a month. there's no correlation between the ice cream and withdrawal and the punishment. In Judaism, when a person sins, essentially they're cutting off God energy in a certain aspect. That automatically creates a result of that energy that you deal with. It's more of a consequence. So there's the general idea about individual sins. They're cutting off a certain resonance with the soul through that. It creates a vacuum, and now there's room for klipa, for negative forces in that vein.
So how do we explain the individuals who are being picked up by ICE agents because they're a different color skin, or they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, then they're carted off to horrible places?
Well, this question, why does bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
Here we're saying more about when there's divine retribution, it's not for nothing. So you're like, what do you mean? When there's an earthquake in Haiti, it's because, whatever.
See, when I think of punishment, I think of punishment. And I don't, all punishment, there's gotta be reasons for it.
But we don't know those reasons.
And
Right.
that's what I struggle with.
And not everything is a punishment. Not all bad is a punishment. That someone did something wrong that they got cancer. It doesn't work like that. It's not everything bad is a punishment, but there is a concept of punishment, whether in this world or the next world. In general, there are those in the religious Jewish community that make a big deal about punishment and reward. In Chabad, it's actually very much like it's downplayed tremendously because it's not the main point. It's a secondary byproduct. Punishment reward, it's not the focus, not your goal. The goal is a relationship, serving God, purpose, changing the world. You do that good energy, reward. You don't do that, vacuum, negative energy you got to deal with. That's the basic idea. Just cleaning a bunch of those. At 4 junctions, there would be a pestilence would increase. The 4th year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, the 7th year of the sabbatical cycle, at the conclusion of the 7th year, at the conclusion of the festival of Sukkot each and every year. It says why. The 4th year, because people did not give the poor man's tithe in the 3rd year, so they suffer a bad crop in the 4th year. Likewise, in the 7th year, because they did not give poor man's tithe, whichever has been given the 6th year as well. At the conclusion of the 7th year, due to the sabbatical year produce, that was not declared ownerless, was not made available to the public. Whatever. And the conclusion of the festival of Sukkot of each every year, because of robbery of gifts to the poor, the corners of the field, the gleanings, the sheaves, all those, when you don't give them, those are like mandatory agricultural gifts to the poor. If you don't, then you're basically causing blessing to be held back and resulting in a calamity. Okay, we'll stop there. Have a good day.